what I wanted to do tonight is kind of start by just taking a look forward. We've got 6 weeks until our final class. And one of those weeks is Thanksgiving, literally Thanksgiving Day, because it's Thursday. And a couple of those weeks we won't be here on campus, including next week. So we're really, after tonight, only here on campus 3 more times. So the end is starting to come over the horizon. So just to kind of go over and review, and pretty much from here on out, we're right in line with what the original syllabus said. So next week, we are not here on campus. There will be an activity on the Moodle for you guys to do. The one difference, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, is that there will be a synchronous activity, meaning that you will have to be online at a certain time to work with other students in the class. Because one of the final Moodle activities I want to show you is the chat activity. So the activity you're going to do next week, you are going to interact with some of the students in the class, but you're going to be doing it through Moodle, through the chat room. Now, I know, for example, that you've got parent-teacher conferences next week because that's why I'm not here. So in terms of when exactly that online bit happens, you can adjust that within your group. I'm going to basically split the class up into 2 sections. So if the 3 or the 4 of you in your small group want to do that activity, not literally at the time where we would normally have this class next week, but to set up a different time to do it, then that's fine with me, as long as that you do find a common time to come together and do the activity. So that's next week, and next week is going to be all about assessment, which is kind of the final piece of the puzzle that we haven't talked about yet in terms of the Moodle projects and in terms of educational technology. We are then back on campus for the following 2 weeks. The week after next, we will follow up on assessment. I'm going to have some little personalized activities that night. I'm going to do a little differentiated instruction stuff related to some things that you guys have been in touch with me about over the course of the course and so on. And then the week after, which is the week before Thanksgiving, is going to be our beta test week for your Moodles. So essentially, that's going to be the week where 2 or 3 other people in the class are going to sit down in front of your Moodle and kind of go through it in a way as if they were a student, and then give you feedback. So it's a way to get some sort of immediate feedback about things you might want to adjust, or if there's an instruction that's confusing or something like that, then it'll give you a few weeks to finalize all that. So that's going to be the main activity that week. We're not here Thanksgiving. We are not here the week after Thanksgiving. That week is basically going to be all just for you to finish up everything that you might have to finish up at that point. And then we have the final class meeting, which is technically the week of finals here, but that doesn't really affect us because we don't have an exam in here. So that final meeting, the main thing on that final meeting is then going to be that each of you is going to do a brief presentation about your technology integration plans and sort of what you did, what you were aiming to do, what your experience was, what you came up with, what your plan is, and then just kind of wrapping everything up. So that's sort of the framework moving forward. So next week's assessment piece and a little bit the week after is sort of the last main new thing. Beyond that, it's really just about mainly the technology integration plans and the Moodle Cloud projects, and just spending time getting those done. And as I said in my texts, you'll have some time tonight as well. What I have planned for tonight is not going to go all the way to the end of the night. So like we did last time, if anyone wants to stay and get some work done or have some questions or things you want me to look at, then there'll be some time to do that tonight as well. All right, so that is the looking forward, I think. Yeah, that was basically it. So in terms of tonight, I want to take a few minutes to talk about phase 4 of the technology integration plans, which is really the last gathering new information together part. There will be one more phase, but that final phase is going to be basically taking bits and pieces and sections of all of the 4 phases you've done already and just assembling them into an actual document that might be something you would present to a board of education or something like that. So there's not going to be much in the way of new content for that final phase. It's going to be more about bringing together and editing the content that you've already created. So I want to talk about phase 4, which is basically about professional development or training related to your TIP. And then I want to follow up with what I wanted to do last week, or what we were going to be talking about last week with Web 2.0. And hopefully everybody's got a Web 2.0 app. And I just thought it would be fun to have everybody talk about the app that they found, introduce it a little bit. And just so we can kind of get a sense, even if it's maybe not an app that relates directly to what you teach, but maybe you can start to get an idea of the kinds of things that the interactive web can offer, because that'll give you yet another resource that you might be able to integrate into your Moodle if you're looking for additional activities or additional things to have your students engage with, that you can then sort of embed in your Moodle. So that'll be the second part. And then, like I said, the remainder of the evening will be about just getting some lab time on stuff. All right, so so the technology integration plans. I'm going to jump right to homework from tonight. So phase 4. So far, you had a chance to look at existing plans. You had a chance to do a bit of a needs assessment and brainstorm about an issue or a problem or a thing you would like to solve through technology, through the use of technology, since it is a technology integration plan, and to do a needs assessment. So where are we right now with this thing, whatever this thing is? Where would I like to be? What is the gap in between? And so on. So we did that. Then the most recent part of it was to actually talk about the actual technology that we were planning on integrating. Whether that's hardware, whether that was software, whether that was some combination of the two, but just to get a good handle and maybe look out there and see, if you're wanting to do, some sort of math practice, something for your students, go out there and look and see, well, what's available out there that might help my students with their math work, that is a technology-based solution. So you were supposed to go out and kind of look at some possibilities and analyze them and assess them and try to figure out which one you might be proposing as the solution you want to propose. So this week, and really the final big week for this whole thing, is about, I had a problem just calling it professional development, because in some cases, depending on what your plan is about, it might actually be student training that's happening. If it's students you're trying to get to use technology, but so some of you it's the staff, some of it you're focused on students. So I just called it kind of professional/student development. You could think of it as training as well. So the goal of this is, okay, so you are proposing to bring this software or this hardware into this school to address this problem. So what is your plan for getting all of the stakeholders who need to actually use that technology up to speed so that they can actually use it effectively? For many of you, this is not the actual plan for deploying the technology. This is making sure that the technology can be used. And I know that's maybe a bit of a subtle distinction, but it's an important one, because a lot of times people immediately jump to just getting it into the classroom and getting students using it without taking that initial step first of, do they just know how to log in? Do they know, where they have to go within the program to do the thing they need to do? So it's not so much about necessarily the use of the hardware, the software, but just making sure that they have the existing skills to make use of it. I know there was at least one of you in here, and I can't remember whose plan it was, that involved, they had noticed that they were using a piece of software already, but things like usernames and passwords were these insanely long and hard to remember. Was that your? Yeah. And you're dealing with, what, first graders, second graders or something, and they're having to remember these passwords that are this weird jumble of characters and everything. So it's more along the lines of that. It's not, yes, we want them to use the software so that they can get better at what they have to do, but are there things that need to be addressed from a training standpoint to get the people to the point where they can actually utilize the technology well. And this is a phase that unfortunately oftentimes gets shortchanged, I think, in a lot of technology plans. Is there's all the focus on, we got this great technology, let's get it in the classrooms and get students using it. And they don't really take the step back and say, well, should there be a step in between to make sure that the students can actually use it? So, there's a bunch here about just sort of what you're looking for, what kinds of questions to ask. I do point out, there are some of you for whom the training is kind of the main focus of your TIP. So in that case, this is going to be really important, a really important section, because this is really what you're saying you need to address. For others, if it's more about integrating a piece of hardware, integrating a piece of software, this may be important, but not the main thrust of your TIP. So, but I do point out that, what you want to focus on here is not the actual use of the software to fix your problem, but on getting people to the point where they can use the software so that then they can start fixing the problem, if that makes sense. So things to think about, educate yourself as best as you can about your technology. I know we are slightly existing in kind of a make-believe world with this project, because you are probably not actually going out and purchasing whatever this thing is and using it. But as best as you can, if you can demo whatever it is, a lot of times if it's software, they will give you a chance to demo the use of it if you contact a company. What do you think your biggest roadblocks are going to be? So as you went and looked at the technology, what did you struggle with, or what kind of threw up flags for you, like passwords are too long or too complicated, that sort of a thing. Think about a timeline and be realistic about it. Give enough time for this training to occur before you start moving into the actual use. If you're working with a faculty, sometimes it may take the better part of a whole school year to get a faculty up and running on something before you can really expect them to start using it in the classroom. In our district, we went to Microsoft, and we were probably a good half of a year or so where they gave the teachers the ability to start looking at it before they sort of started saying, well, now we want you to start using this in the classroom. So it can take time, and that is okay. Think about differentiated instruction. All right. If you think about whatever population you're looking at, as we all know from working in our own classrooms, you're going to have people at different levels. You will have a couple people in there that probably can grasp the technology right away and will be off and running and doing their own thing, barely having had any training at all. And then you're going to have the other people who are proud of the fact that they still don't know how to check their email without help from somebody, right? So if you're thinking about training and you're coming up with a plan for training, just like in a good classroom, how are you going to keep both of those ends of the spectrum engaged? How do you bring the people who need more help along? And how at the same time do you utilize and not make the people bored who kind of get it right away or maybe already have some experience? So give some thought to that. And then from an assessment standpoint, what's your measurement going to be to know that your target population is now ready to move on? That they're ready to start deploying or using or whatever the technology that you're proposing that they use. So all of these need to be part of this is essentially like coming up with a series of lesson plans, the same things you would do in a classroom. What are the issues going to be? What sequence are we going to use? How long is this going to take? How am I going to differentiate within my population? And how am I going to know that the students are ready to move on to the next task? So it's, that kind of thing. So as we've been doing with all of this it's going to be a Word document. I give you a couple of things that you should address, and it's basically following up on those questions. I give you a little summary here. You're going to restate the technology that you're planning on using. You're going to give me an overview of the plan. You're going to give me specific goals that you're trying to reach within that plan and how you plan to assess whether they've reached those goals. Give me a little bit about your differentiation ideas, and then a timeline for the training. Is that going to be over the course of a month? Is it going to be over the course of several months or a year? What do you think is going to be practical in terms of deploying this technology. So you title the document as requested and you submit it to this activity, and I will see it at my end. All right. So questions on that overview? There's obviously more on this page for you to read when you have a moment, but does that, as an overview of the activity, make more or less sense? Right? So what you should have by the time this phase is done is you know what you're trying to, you know the subject of your plan. You've done a needs assessment on the plan. You've targeted the technology you're going to use for the plan, and you now have a plan for putting the training into place so that that technology can be used. As I said, you are then going to be drawing pieces, pulling pieces of each of those out, and I'll have a template for you to use, and you'll be putting that information into a unified template that will then give you your actual technology integration plan. There will be a couple of little pieces left that aren't covered by these phases, but they're relatively small. If you've got a way to come up with any sort of a budget, I know, again, we're in the world of make-believe here, so you may not know, how much would it cost to have this many teachers do this many days of in-service. So that's not going to be a huge piece of it. But mainly, once you finish this, your TIP should be basically done. Just need to be kind of assembled and formatted and stuck out there into the world. All right. I did, by the way, and I know this, I meant to do this earlier, even last week, and the weeks just kept getting away from me, but I did go back. I don't know if you guys get notifications about this or not, but I did go back and look at everybody's phase 1 and phase 2s and give comments. So I think if you go into the assignment, there should be an assignment comment that you can read, some feedback from me. At least as of a half an hour ago, in terms of phase 3, there was only one person who had gotten phase 3 in yet. So I didn't provide a lot of commentary there yet. But if I see those come in, I'll try to give some commentary on that. And then as soon as I see these coming in as well. Generally speaking, what I'm seeing is good. I think breaking it down this way and letting us focus on each piece of the puzzle separately is useful. So generally what I've been seeing is good. Just maybe a couple comments here and there about maybe making some goals more specific, or just some things to think about as you move forward, or some adjustments to make. But those should be in there. So this, I actually set the due date for this, not for next week, but for the week after, since we won't be together next week. And what I'll be doing in 2 weeks is giving you that overview template, so that then you've got several weeks to assemble everything and clean it up and make sure it's all good and the T's are dotted and the I's are crossed. And wait, flip that. The I's are dotted and the T's are crossed before the end of the course, when these will officially be due. All right, so we're good?
Yep.
Okay, as always, any questions, concerns, please feel free to get in touch with me at any point. So that kind of takes care of that piece. All right, so going back now to Web 2.0, and like I said, what I wanted to do, I had given you several weeks ago now, when we first talked about Web 2.0, I had given you links to a couple of pages that are sort of Web 2.0 resource pages that just gathered all sorts of different things, just places you could go and kind of click on stuff and see what was out there. So I just wanted to give a chance to kind of see what people came up with. Those of you that had already posted something to the forum from a couple weeks ago, I did go ahead and put links in here. But my idea was that each of you, even if your stuff's not up here yet, just share a little bit about what the Web 2.0 thing you found. Who do you think it would be useful for in terms of a subject area or a grade level? Maybe a brief little description about it. And I'll sort of take notes up here so that, if any of these are useful to you or seem interesting to you, you'll have this as a reference to come back to. But there are literally, as you saw on those pages, literally thousands of sites out there that would fall under this name Web 2.0 or the interactive web. And a lot of it has an educational focus. because that's where a lot of this stuff is being used. So the ability to be able to go in and essentially just pull a piece of interactive content directly from the web, particularly if your school's a Chromebook school, because that's about the only way you can run software is if it is web-based. And so a lot of this stuff would give you a lot of additional functionality. So I thought I would start off with, actually I need to go into this a different way so that I can add stuff to it. I thought I would start off by sharing one of my own. And this is a website that I was made aware of through a course that I took this past summer. Let me open this up a bit here. There was an electronic music class, and the site is called Groove Pizza. And I use this, I have used this I teach an electronic music class at my school. I also teach a songwriting class. And this is just a really, really fast, easy, quick little app that allows people to create drum beats with basically almost no experience. And it's got kind of a unique interface in terms of how it looks and how it's used. Most, oh, okay, can't link on it. So this is what it looks like. This is the entire site. There's no sub pages or anything like that. There's no login. There's no anything. This is the entire thing. It is a one-page tool. And the way it works, if you know anything about the way drums are played, is that a drummer at any given moment is typically playing 3 different instruments, one with a foot and 2 with their hands. And those 3 different instruments generally have slightly different roles in terms of creating a drum beat. So what this website decided to do was, rather than showing a drum beat in a grid form, which is sort of the main way that drum machines are usually set up, is that it sets it up in this, and this is why it's called Groove Pizza, in this circular form. So it kind of reinforces the idea that drum beats loop around. So each of the subdivisions, or the slices they call them, go around, and then there are 3 kind of tiers, and each one of those tiers represents a different instrument. One of them is a kick drum or the bass drum. One of them is usually a snare kind of a sound, and the other one's sort of a hi-hat, cymbal-y kind of a sound. And basically, you create beats simply by clicking on the dots in a particular ring, and any dot you click on, that will play on that slice as it goes around. And because it's in this circle, they kind of went with this shape idea. So you can drop shapes on top of this and hear what the shape sounds like as it plays. So this is their most basic beat. Right, so it's circling around through the 16 slices. But if I add, like, there's another bass drum sort of sound. They didn't put anything in the snare drum ring. So if I want to put in a backbeat here, whoops, wrong circle. All right, now you got a little groove going. They give you the ability if you want to do things by shape. So let's hear what a 4-pointed shape sounds like if I put it on the kick drum part. So there it lays a square there, and I could put, I don't know what a 6-pointed star would sound like if I put it in the. All right, there we go. Now we're grooving. All right, so you can do that. You can change the speed of it. You can change the volume. You can swing. Swing is a rhythm thing where rather than subdividing a beat evenly, it's subdivided unevenly. That gives you like blues and jazz kind of a feel. You can change the number of slices. And then you can actually create 4 patterns and make each of those patterns different, which then will change the feel, and it'll cycle through. So you can create up to 4 pizzas that it rotates through. So if you want to put a fill in or something like that. So anyways, all of that music stuff aside, because I know none of you are music teachers and you probably don't really care, but this is kind of a perfect example of what we mean when we say Web 2.0 or interactive web. So in the early days of websites, the most they would have been able to do would be just to put, text and formatted text and graphics on the screen, but there wouldn't have been any way for me to interact with that. And now with the modern HTML language and with other tools, you can now create something like this on a website where the user has this high level of interactivity. So I could throw this. I mean, this is great because it's so easy. Like a kindergarten student could use this and get beats going right away. And I use it all the way up with high school kids and beyond. It's not terribly sophisticated. So a lot of my high school students maybe are a little beyond this. But if they've never played drums before, never created a drum beat before, here's a real easy way for them to very quickly get something up and running and really kind of hear the results of their choices right away. So this is something that in my own classes, when I use my own classroom management tool, which is Teams, Microsoft Teams, I can link into this website, and then essentially I've added all of this functionality to my class website, not because I had to create it from scratch, but because these guys created it for me, and then I just pulled that in. So that's the kind of thing that the interactive web, the Web 2.0, is able to give us. So there you go, Groove Pizza. So in case you're ever sitting around and you're bored and you just feel like you need a little bit of a beat to keep you going, you can come over in here and check out Groove Pizza and go from there. So, all right. So I like I said, I've got 3 in here that were ones that had already been posted and I'd seen, but we don't necessarily have to go in this order. So is there anybody that wants to throw out what they... Yeah, so you had the Kahoot.
Yes. So I agree that it would be for any subject, and then for grade level, I would do it really for any grade level. I think my first graders would need a little bit more help, or I would just use it in like small group with my guys, because I don't think they could really handle it. Whole group, I think it might be too exciting for them. So let me see. So with this application, it's kind of like a question and answer kind of thing. So the teacher can create games or quizzes or questions, and the students can see if they're right or wrong in real time. And I think it's effective for teachers to collect data quickly so that they can kind of get a quick read on how their students are doing or what they understand or don't understand. I know if I taught like 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, I would use it more often whole group, but again, I don't think my little guys could handle it. And I think it would be really good, especially during math and phonics instruction, because I'm seeing at the beginning, obviously it's a lot of like pre-assessment stuff, and now that we're really getting into it, I can really see like who gets what we're talking about and who really kind of is struggling with what we're talking about. So I think it would be beneficial to get a quick read on how we're doing and that kind of stuff. So I would love to try it at some point in my classroom.
So you've never used it?
I haven't, but I would.
Has anybody in here used Kahoot? Oh, so yeah, many. Yeah, this has become a really popular one. In fact, at one of our recent faculty meetings at school, they actually used it with the faculty because they wanted to get a quick read on something. And so for those of you that haven't seen it, basically you enter the questions. It gives you, I think, up to 4 possible answers. So it's like setting up a normal quiz, but the way it runs is it displays the question, and then the 4 answers are on these 4 color-coded shape things. And students or anybody can basically connect to the game from their phone or from their device and can then answer straight from there. So you can run it at one level where it just tells you sort of how many people answered each answer, or you can assign points to it, and then it becomes a little competitive thing, and it actually shows you after each round who the leader is. It's kind of like doing trivia at the barroom trivia or whatever they have at restaurants and things like so you pick a name and then it shows who's on the leaderboard and so on. But yeah, again, this is a great example of interactive web. It takes a little bit of setup on the teacher's end because you obviously have to set the quiz up first. But it's pretty rock solid. They've designed it so that, we've had several hundred students all logged into it at the same time, like where they'll be throwing a survey out or doing some quick something or other, and it doesn't blink. I mean, it's very straightforward in terms of how it works. So it doesn't require high powered technology or things like that. It's really great way to get a lot of people involved. Or like you said, if you just want to get a quick feel on a group, it could be not even necessarily a quiz, but just like, how comfortable are you with blah, blah, blah? And they can just self-assess. And then very quickly you can see, oh, people feel like they're pretty confident with this. Or, wow, it looks like half the class doesn't know anything about this. So it can be a fun way to get that kind of a thing in there. So, and like I said, it's become, I think, one of the main tools that shows up in a lot of educational settings now in a lot of different ways. Oh, look at that. Let's teach our 3-year-olds to, anyways, another story. All right. So, yeah. So in terms of grade level, you said.
I would do it K-12 also, but I think I know K-1 and probably even 2 would need a lot of extra support or even just a small group setting.
Yeah, and also probably at that age level, you're not going to be expecting the students to have their own devices. Yeah. They would have to be doing it on a machine or on something that you would supply.
Chromebooks and stuff that they would have to use.
Yeah.
Although a few of the first graders have something.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I feel pretty proud. We almost got my daughter all the way to 8th grade before she got a phone. We had always told her not till you're in 8th grade, not till you're in 8th grade, and we gave in like the last month and a half of 7th grade. But she had all these field trips and stuff going on, and it was really getting to a point where it actually was useful to have her have a phone so that she could get in touch with us. I think what broke the camel's back was she came back from something once and they got back early and she couldn't call us to let us know that she was back already, and that caused drama and stuff. So, but yeah, phones for kindergartners, first graders, yes. Anyways, okay, so there's Kahoot, who, yeah, you've got the This Is Language one. Yeah, I should have, unfortunately, because I did this as, oh, here, I can do this.
Just as a quick aside, I just learned about this other, it's very, very similar to Kahoot, but it's called Quizzes. Yeah. It's Quiz, and then IZZ at the end.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think I've seen that as well.
It's very similar. I think it gives a little bit more detailed feedback. I've only used it a few times, but I like the feedback that it gives a little bit better than Kahoot. And I also onesie and then IZZ.
You can also do
quiz.
Different kinds of quizzes. Yep. It's not just like the answer with the things you click. You can do I can't remember exactly. I just remember it had more options. Is just what I remember.
Yeah.
And you can have more than 5 or more than 4 questions or more than 4 possible answers.
Yeah.
And with the point values with Kahoot, one thing that I've noticed sometimes is the kids are so concerned about, because it takes into account if you do it first.
Right. Yeah.
So they're so concerned with being fast that they don't really.
Yeah. When we've used it in that mode, it's usually for a very low stakes or no stakes sort of situation where you're really just trying to gamify an activity. We don't really care what the points are. It doesn't really matter that there's not a winner. We're not really asking them to really go beyond the most superficial sort of quick reaction. But if we want to develop that gamification energy of I got to get there, and then some kids get more engaged. Oh yeah, they get.
I think it's screaming at each other over Kahoots, and it's so funny. And they look at me like I'm gonna be mad, and they just laugh. I think it was we did root words, and it was at the end of the unit they had all 50, and I made a Kahoot for it as part of their practice. And I said whoever won got candy, because candy is what keeps my classroom from anarchy. And they, oh my God, they were just screaming at each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Stupid.
They get involved the minute. Yeah. All right, so This Is Language. You don't do you have a login for it?
Yeah. Do you my email at So it's just Schaefer, SHAFFER.
FFERT at, yeah, and then you can do your own password.
I think I can at least. Oops.
Yep,
Okay.
there we go.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, it's in terms of.
Oh, that's funny. It asked if I wanted to translate this page.
Yeah.
Like the whole point is that it's in other languages. All right.
Exactly.
So anyway, so here we are.
In terms of the table, definitely more for world languages. As far as I know, I don't know if they do other languages outside of Spanish and French, but those are the flags obviously over there, and you can keep track of. If you have students in a like registered in a class or like signed up in your class, then you can keep track of points and through activities that they can do. But there's a lot more that I probably to it that I haven't explored yet. But the ways that I've used it so far have been mostly to go through videos, and basically like all of these are different tags, different prompts that people that work with this is language go around in these countries. So the Mexico flag, and then Ecuador, or not Ecuador,
Okay.
Colombia, go around asking these people these prompts, and then these people will respond. So the primary way that I've used it is for listening comprehension, and they get to listen to native speakers.
Bueno, me encanta escuchar música, es una parte vital. Para mí, desde que pongo la primera canción en la mañana, esa primera canción define cómo va a ser mi día. Sí, puede ser una canción muy movida.
So they get the stars underneath are the difficulty level. So the lower the stars, the lower the difficulty, the higher the more
Got it.
difficult.
Huh.
And then on the right, the jig, like all those are different activities. So the students can click in. If you click next, the video will pop up, and while they listen to it, they can drag and drop those in the right place.
Huh.
So they have to be able to. This is less listening comprehension as far as like meaning, but more being able to recognize what it is that they're hearing.
Sure.
And if you
Yeah.
go back, some of the other like the comprehension, the blue one, the same sort of idea. They have to be able to answer the questions based on what they hear.
He finds it annoying.
Yeah, so it's cool, and you can create worksheets that, like print worksheet, and you can include different activities. So you could make it a gap fill worksheet where they have to fill in the gap or whatever. So I've printed a couple and had them use that. And do it that way.
Wow, there's a lot in this.
Yeah, it's a really great tool, especially to be able to get them to hear native speakers. And I'm not sure about that because the district.
Oh, this is something that Region 10 has?
Our department has it.
Huh.
As a subscription. So it's primarily obviously for world language, and even the lower difficulty levels, I've had it's a challenge sometimes to find content for younger kids. So maybe
More like middle and high school, probably.
Yeah,
like say 6 through 12 or so.
Yeah, I've used it with my 6. I haven't used it with my 5th graders.
It's like $500 a language and then $4 per student.
And I haven't added a class yet, but because I think within the department we only want to add so many or something weird like that. But.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing. I mean this is also the kind of thing that in some ways is starting to replace textbook kind of stuff. Like we find these kinds of comprehensive sites where you can really deliver the bigger part of an entire curriculum.
Yeah, and
pretty much
tags, they're kind of categorized.
Right, so you can really look for things related to any specific thing, and wow, that is really kind of cool. All right. Well, I got Nearpod here. Do you want to go next? Let me grab the URL for it and see what this one is about.
So my account, where I had a few of these, actually created is not active anymore. So I made
Gotcha.
a dummy one earlier today with my work email just to make sure the functions were the same, nothing changed.
Okay.
So I could just kind of.
Yeah. If you do you want to, if
I have a test page. I'm sure the
yeah, just so that we can
have,
kind of
if
see.
I had my original one, it would have been nice to see a full one complete. Alright, so how nearby have you used this before?
I have not actually. I read your description of it.
So let's say, so how this kind of works, it's like as if you're doing a traditional PowerPoint, so you can relay information out by creating slides. You put content on it. However, within there, so create a slide. You have options to add content to like a traditional PowerPoint, add web content where it embeds for you links of, let's say, YouTube links or etc. That becomes interactive in that PowerPoint, if you will. And the last part I like a lot is activity, where you can add almost anything in there. So let's say if you just did a slide of content, so I'm relaying some kind of historical facts or whatever, then after that, it'll have a random slide that pops up where students can answer a question as like a formative assessment, and then I'll get the answer. I can see how many kids understood that topic, if I have to go back and re-teach that. And what's nice about this is you can do it as a class, or it could be student driven. So you can have maybe like you introduce a topic, a few bullet points, explain that topic, set images for them to analyze, and then you can throw in a video, and then you have some check for understanding question they can do at home. So it kind of allows you to kind of flip the classroom a little bit as well if you wanted to, and organizes it all in one area.
Yeah. What's the is it Flipgrid? Is that Zipgrid? No, there's something like Flip. It's Flip something.
Yeah,
Flipgrid or Flipbook or Flip.
Flipgrid.
It is Flipgrid.
Like where you send videos back and forth.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know. I think they've used up all of the names at this point, so there are all these sites that are really similar to each other in terms of their names. But yeah, so then a student, if you had created one, if they came here, they would be viewing it, obviously just as the.
So when it's finished, there's a class code, and I could just put that link with my code in there for each one has an individual code. They can put it on their cell phone, whatever, or on their own computers at home or in the classroom. You can just follow along. And I know one point it says so it's timed. So as I'm moving along, it forces them to move along too. If I'm flipping through a slide and I move on, it'll move them along too on their screens.
Huh.
So
That would be interesting to use in like a synchronous online classroom environment, where that way, rather than screen sharing, they could, be doing, but then you would have sort of remote control over where they were looking. Now, do the students have to have an account to get in, or do they just need a link? As long as they've got the link, they can.
That's how I was trying to figure it out by doing this test. And before it was as long as you had the link, you were able to go in and follow along.
Gotcha. All right. So that is. So really, this could be used in basically any content area, and pretty much.
I would probably say 6 through 12, but depending on what you're doing, you could do it with younger kids.
Because all they really have to do is navigate through the slides, like, or obviously interact with any content that you put on the slide. So, yeah, I guess it would depend on how complex you made the. So I'll just call like online slideshow app for content and activities. So, all right, yeah, this is not one.
The assessment part is nice about it. It's hard in the middle of a lesson to quickly, assess students. Like, if we use Microsoft Form, you have to change a page, have them upload an answer. Here, it's just smooth. It keeps on going. It's right on the same site. Within my PowerPoint, I'll get the results right on the side in a separate bar, so I don't have to go back. So it's just really smooth, and that really helps with transitions.
Cool. All right, yeah, we've got some good stuff here. All right, so that uses up the ones that I knew about already. So The remaining 3, who wants to throw their site out here?
Bro.
Yeah. Or
I was gonna do Flipgrid, which you mentioned earlier.
Oh, okay.
That's the one I've used the most. We used it a lot in Talent last year. One of the teachers was really into it, so I just went along with it because.
do you have a login?
No, not anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's if you just scroll down, I mean, you can kind of get a sense of what it is. Basically, you make a class. Just
Oh, you
like
do?
You would.
If you don't mind us logging in, just so we get a bit of a chance to see.
He's on top of things.
I just know about a bunch of things and I'm really bad at using them.
When you have coworkers that make lessons for you, so you don't have to plan because they're really into something. That's my idea.
You could,
All right.
probably the most has the top one, Spanish 3 honors.
Okay.
There's some things in there.
I mean, so like basically you send out a video, like of you, to your class. They've all joined it using their school email or whatever, and a code, and then they respond with videos of their own from their phones. I think you can use a computer with webcam too if you wanted. And it's good when you have like for world languages. I've seen a lot of people use it for that because they do so much speaking. Any kind of discussion class or younger kids because they're not able to write that well. The kind of the limitation is like I taught 4 periods of writing exclusively, so obviously it wasn't good for that. But my other 2 periods were a discussion and speech class, so it was really helpful for that. As far as like
Oh, okay, I see. So
you literally, rather than giving, it's like a forum except with written feedback. They are posting videos and you are responding with videos of your own.
gotcha.
Students can respond to one another.
So like video conversation.
Like at the stupidest level, it could be like show and tell of something at your house. That's like how I did practice in my class. When I like my show and tell is my dog,
Gotcha.
and then like all the kids responded with like their weird pet turtles and stuff.
All right. Yeah, let
I
me.
think as far as age, like it could be K to 12, but I would say the limitations within that are kind of pretty big. Like if you're gonna do younger kids, obviously they would be doing it with their parents at home, so you would have to have the kind of class where you have involved families that have technology access.
Yeah.
For high school, it's gonna be more languages and discussion classes because so much of what we do is writing, or like a music class. So it could be K to 12, but when it can be used, it's not every class that it would work for. So it's never something that could be implemented like kind of school wide, like a Kahoot or Google Classroom or
Right.
whatever else.
So it definitely has a niche or a strength.
Yeah.
But
It's free, so it doesn't. It's not something that you have to worry about.
I'll call it video conversations
Yeah. And they're
and
usually really funny too. So
activities. So you would say what in terms of grade then is sort of a final?
I guess it could be K to 12, just with ish.
I like the ish. That's always a.
Because you could do a lot of different things with it.
Yeah. Actually, that's. And this is free.
Yeah. So like when I did a discussion class, sometimes the kids would like draft their speech. Like it had to be. They would show like a 30-second clip of their speech, and they would get feedback on it. Whereas, with like a younger class, it might be, sounding out your vowels, or I don't really understand what to do at that level, but so it can manifest itself a lot of different ways in terms of content.
Cool. Yeah, actually, I just had a thought about I should look into this because something like this might actually solve an issue I'm having in my department right now. So, yeah. See, that's why I like doing this kind of stuff because nobody can know everything that's out there. So the more eyes you have and the more, everybody's got their own area of expertise or their own topic that they're looking for. And sometimes somebody will find something related to their topic area that you go, oh, that would also work for mine, even though it may be a totally different subject area. So cool. All right, we're down to the back row there.
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No.
So I want to talk about Prezi,
Yeah.
and specifically the new version of Prezi, which is called Prezi Next. I actually do have a login, but I don't. You can log in if you want me to.
Is it a separate site, or do you
No,
still
just
get?
Go to,
Just go to Prezi.
Like triple and stuff. Don't mind me. I'm not gonna ask you to spell my name.
That's all right. Yeah, there's a lot of extra Z's and stuff in it.
Yeah, it's excessive. I think that's the right one.
Looks good.
All right, cool. So, if you go to Prezi next, which is in the black, I guess. So, if you go to the murder mystery one, we started this kind of as like a I don't want to say a joke, but like we started doing web quests, and so the old Prezi was just like fancy PowerPoint. But if you go to Prezi Next, you can actually make the kids like go on a journey, right? So like this one starts off like I started this with a couple people on my team, and you can when you go into all of these things, there's like so we started trying to create a murder mystery, and it was gonna be like murder on the Oregon Trail, but we couldn't find an Oregon Trail like template. So everything in Prezi is clickable, and you can add all kinds of stuff. And every time you click on something, when it zooms in, you're creating another slide automatically. And then to back out, there's the arrow in the bottom left corner. And you don't have to go in order, which is really nice for doing web quests because, I mean, you can see we didn't make it too far into this, but it's one of those things that like you can, every time you click into something, like I said, it creates a new slide isn't the right word, but like a new piece of information.
Yeah.
So if you back all the way out to the right to there, so like you could go to river crossing, but you could also go to mountain pass. It doesn't matter. So like click on one, and then again we have if you back out and then go click on the other one, it lets you go in, and then there's all sets of different. So anyway, the point is it's awesome for web quests. You have to build it for the kids, but then it gives them the opportunity to really like figure stuff out. So like a murder mystery is a great way for them to get some like investigative skills. Like I teach science, so we're doing like peppered moths, for example, right? So we're gonna do a version of this where they're web questing through peppered moths during the Industrial Revolution and how they changed from white to black. Right, and so like all of these different things are possible because it's not like a PowerPoint where everything goes in order. Now, kids can just click on the arrows. If you go to the bottom in the center, there's 2 arrows, and it will take you in the order that you created it. And there's a timeline as you're creating it. It'll take you through each clickable slide individually. But if you're trying to get the kids to investigate, putting some things out of order for them can be a really cool way to break the script for them too, because they're actually having to figure it out as they go. Like if you go to Mountain Pass, for example, we lost an adult from our party, right? Well, if they need to, at some point when we get this whole thing finished, they're gonna have to go back to where they thought the adult went missing. And there's gonna be a little clue in the corner that tells them this is when that person went missing. So it's a really cool tool. Like I said, it's way better than the older version of Prezi Classic, which is still a way better version of PowerPoint than PowerPoint is. But this is the new version is really nice because things don't have to go in order. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, it reminds me. Oh, here we go. I just wanted to get a website here. There's a whole field of geometry called fractal geometry. And if you don't know, fractals are geometric figures that have infinite resolution or infinite detail. So if you keep zooming in and zooming in and zooming in, there's the detail or the patterning or the geometry keeps replicating no matter how far in you zoom. So there's particular formulas that when you graph them out, um, are like that create a drawing like this where if no matter how far you zoom in, you will keep seeing miniature versions of the same set reappearing, and you can just keep zooming and zooming. And this to me has always felt a little like that, because you can set it up where you just feel like, oh, I see the whole picture, and you click on something, and then all of a sudden there's like a whole new subworld that opens up there, and then you click on another one, and a whole new subworld opens up there, and you keep sort of digging in further and further. So I like it for that. For that kind of depth, and the fact that you can organize content that way instead of being sequential. So I'm going to call this sort of, in terms of a descriptor, like a non-sequential content exploration presentation thingy. Something along those lines. What would you say in terms of like appropriate grade levels for this?
I mean, it depends on what you're doing with it. Like, if you're just using it to convey information, it could definitely be an any grades thing. But if you're using it as a web quest, I would say probably middle grades up, because I feel like elementary students may not have the skill set to do a web quest unguided. I don't know, though. I would assume that an elementary teacher would have to make that call.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with a lot of these, especially these presentation kinds of things, it does kind of boil down to how complex is the content you're providing, or whatever. So all right, cool. Well, one more. Stephanie, you're up. And I know you are doing kind of a last minute one because you
Yeah,
had
that
to.
too. But you actually said it earlier as well. I ended up writing a little write-up about Microsoft Teams. So my Moodle project is basically about training my staff members. I have to hire college students and train them to work in preschool classrooms around Hartford. So I'm going to use Microsoft Teams to set up a lot of our team meetings. Our schedules really don't align perfectly, especially with transportation and things of that nature. So I can meet with my staff members on there. It has a really cool capability of putting like a PowerPoint presentation on, and people can follow it as I go through the slides. You can hand the presentation out to somebody else virtually, and they can start talking about it and engage members. There's also a functionality on the side of it where you can have like a chat room while somebody's presenting, so people can like talk about and discuss things and like not interrupt the presenter. It has features for each user to either show their camera or not show their camera at any point in time, mute and unmute their mic. You can record the phone calls. You can see who's on a call, exactly when they logged off and when they logged on. That's going to be important because I have to keep track of like their training hours and things of that nature. I think it's a really good resource.
Yeah, I mean, this is, Teams kind of is maybe making a little bit of a bridge away from what we might consider traditional Web 2.0, because this is really getting into like an entire, but it is still, I mean, this is the kind of thing that the thought of being able to do something like this in the first version of the internet would have been practically unthinkable, that you could do all this. It was, Teams was created by Microsoft as an industry solution. So it was really designed towards business and towards business teams, and exactly what you're saying, having meetings, doing activities, or organizing projects and keeping track of all of that. Microsoft had for a while something called, interestingly enough, Classroom, which for some mysterious reason they decided to ditch. And they basically said, oh, Teams is now going to be our classroom thing too. And so those of us in school districts that have adopted Microsoft are struggling a little bit, because Teams is not really designed like Moodle was from the ground up to be a learning management system. It was really designed to be a collaborative tool for business teams to work together. So you can use it in education as well, and they are saying Microsoft is adding more things to it. You can add into a team, you can add a OneNote notebook. And if you're doing it through an educational setting, every student in your class automatically gets their own section of that OneNote notebook where they can get notes. You can distribute handouts to them that way. They can submit assignments through Teams. There is an assignment module. So they took some of the pieces of Microsoft Classroom and kind of glommed them on to Microsoft Teams and now said, this is now our big educational tool. It's sort of successful. I think it could have been more successful if they had just stuck with Classroom and just made that better. But yeah, I mean, like Stephanie said, you can actually do calls. I don't want to pull anyone up here because I don't know most of these people because this is through the university and most of these are their faculty members. You've got calendars. You can set up assignments or activities. You can have multiple teams, so you can set up teams. You can join teams. In our school district, Power School automatically creates teams, so that there's a bridge between Power School and Teams, so that if a student is added in Power School, they automatically are added to your team. But a teacher can also create teams. So if you've got a club or an activity or a small group of students that you want to set up a team for, you can do that. You've got sort of text chatting as an option, and other activities and things like that. And then you can also, they have all these other apps that you can add in that are all sorts of different things. There's Zoom, which is another video conferencing tool. I think Yammer is another communication tool. Power Apps, you can actually design your own apps and deploy them here. So there's, basically anything that Microsoft has its claws into, which is a lot. There's Flipgrid. So you could actually integrate Flipgrid directly into Teams as an option and things like that. So yeah, so it's Teams is kind of at a larger scale or a bigger scope than some of the others we've looked at, but it's definitely, again, an example of what is now possible through the web that would have been unthinkable, a decade ago or so. Teams does have its own standalone app too. So you can access Teams through the web like this, or you can also get your own app. They have mobile apps as well for iPads and phones and stuff like that. So yes.
Do you use Teams primarily or OneNote in your classroom?
I use Teams, but I always have a OneNote notebook within Teams. Mm-hmm. So depending on the activity, I'll do assignments usually through the assignments module of Teams. Mm-hmm. But anything in terms of note sheets and activities or assignment sheets or things like that, I put those in the OneNote notebook. Okay. So they'll usually go into Teams first and then click on the notebook from there to get to the class notebook.
I do most, or actually 99% through Teams. I'm starting to grade on.
Yeah.
I'm OneNote. Excuse me, on OneNote.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that. If I put the rubric in the page that they've on, then I can go in and mark the rubric, and then they get that. Using the actual assignments in Teams means you can put an actual scoring rubric that you click on, really nice. And then it right scores away. It, and then the students can see the score and so on. Yeah. So I'll put and Teams is actually really a part of the whole Microsoft Office suite. So I'll put this link in there, but I don't know if that's linked specifically to me. Whoops, let's not do that. Yeah, so again, this is a tool that's kind of good for anyone. We are actually, in our district, are using Teams at pretty much every level. They're using it at the elementary level. I mean, at a very basic sort of a way. But, and this is really, I'll say it's Microsoft's version of a learning management system. So it really gives you some of that functionality. So, all right. So yeah, the point of this, and already, at least for myself, I've learned a couple new things and have seen a couple things I might want to check out more. But, this is a definite down the rabbit hole kind of a thing. You can keep digging and digging and digging and finding new things out there. The tricky thing can be that, some of these sites don't last very long. So you may get something set up and use it in a class, and then you come back the next semester and the company's disappeared, or they've been bought out by somebody else, or it doesn't work the way it used to. So generally sticking with the ones that are better known can be a surer bet. So like Kahoot is probably not going anywhere anytime soon. Prezi is probably not going anywhere anytime soon. Groove Pizza, that was kind of a project by a group of students at a university. So it might stick around, but who knows? I may come in a month and discover that they decided to take it down because it was just sort of a project and they figured they were done with it and whatever. So it's always good anytime, this is good for any web content, but anytime you incorporate something web-based into anything instructional, before you use it, usually the day that you're going to use it with your students, check it. Check the links, check that they're still good. I had this great interactive frequency table that I used for years in my classes, and it was awesome, and I'd never found anything else like it. And this year, the day I was going to introduce it to the kids, I clicked on the link, and the site's gone. Like whoever created it, their site is just, like the site doesn't even exist anymore. So last minute, I'm like, oh, I got to scramble, got to get something else in there. But that's just good practice, is to always check anything. But like I said, if you're using one of the more established ones, you can feel pretty confident that it's going to be around for a while, and you're not going to have to worry too much about it. So, all right, anything else related to interactive web, anything like that? The idea is, again, I'm trying to stay away from, with your Moodle projects, with dictating, you need to have this many graphics and you have this many videos and this many audios and but I am hoping that through your Moodle, in the interests of getting sort of a broad range of types of delivery of content and so on, that you're looking to incorporate as many of these as possible. So I'm not going to require you to incorporate an interactive web element into your Moodle, but having gone through these or others that you've used, if you think there would be a good fit, then that would be a nice way to kind of expand the capabilities of the Moodle even beyond their own activity offerings. So just something to think about going forward. All right, so last thing really for me to go over tonight is just to kind of review what is happening over the next week, actually the next couple of weeks. So thing number one we went over already, that's the integration project, phase 4 assignment. If you didn't do phase 3, I would suggest doing that first, because it's going to be hard for you to develop a training program plan if you haven't really identified the specific technology that you're training the people on yet. So do them in order. So you might want to go back and get caught up on 3, but then work on 4. And like I said, I'm not even really expecting to be able to see these until 2 weeks from now. So you've got a little bit more time on them. Moodle projects, just keep chipping away at those. At this point, with the exception of assessment, which is the piece for next week, we've now covered in here segmentation. We've covered most of the activities within the Moodle environment. We've got text, we've got graphics, we've got video, we've done audio, we've seen the activities, we've now got interactive web tools. So with that library of tools available to you, you should be able to pretty much at this point assemble all of the content that you need in your Moodle and get it ready to go. The only thing that I was requiring was that introductory video for each of the segments, but that's like a 1-minute video of some sort. Beyond that, it's really up to you. What do you think is going to be the best way to deliver your content in each of your sections? As a reminder, looking down the road, that these projects should be ready for beta testing in 3 weeks. That's the week where other people are going to be trying it out. They don't necessarily have to be 100% done by then, but there should be enough that somebody can really go through your content and give you some meaningful feedback in terms of last things that you'll need to do to clean up. I am, over the course of this next week, before our next class, I'm going to try to do a second round of feedback on your Moodles. So whatever forum you put on your Moodle where I was able to type in my feedback, I'll try to come around again and take a look at where you are now and give you some additional commentary. as I said, for next week about assessment, we're not going to be on campus, but there will be a class activity. What I will plan on doing is I'll probably make the website available Wednesday. So like a day early, I'll open up that week in the Moodle. And essentially there's going to be an article or a chapter to read about assessment, and particularly online assessment, and some things to think about. There's a lot in there about, one of the biggest issues with testing online is cheating, because you're generally not right there looking over your students' shoulders. So what sort of strategies can you use to make sure that if you're assessing somebody using a technology tool, that you're actually getting accurate assessment data from them? So the reading has some information about that, some ideas from that. And then there will be 2 chat rooms set up. And I'm just going to split you guys into 2 groups, and the chat rooms will be labeled with the names of the people for that group. And like I said, I will suggest a time, but if you know that you are not available at that time, then send out a message to me, either to me or to the other people in your group, saying I can't be in the chat room at this time. Is there another time that we can do this? And the idea will be is you will have read the chapter. There will be a forum, and in that forum, I will pre-post several questions that you might see on an assessment. And then you, in your chat room with your group, are going to discuss those questions and see if there are things that you would do to those questions to make them more hardened for online deployment, if that makes sense. So incorporating some of the thoughts and ideas of, if I was going to use an online assessment tool to ask this thing, is this the best way to ask it to make sure that I'm getting accurate information? Or is there something I could do to this question to make it a little bit better in terms of an online assessment tool? So you'll discuss it in your group, and then in the forum, you'll post your suggestions for what you might do to alter the questions to make them a little bit more online appropriate. So that's basically going to be the overview of the activity. If you want to take care of it during our class meeting time next week, that's fine. But as long as sometime over the course of those days, or a couple of other days, the days immediately following, as long as you find a time to be in that chat room with the other people in your group. And that will also give you guys a chance to see how the chat room activity works in Moodle, because you might want to incorporate that into your Moodles, because it's a nice interactive tool. And then the last thing, as is kind of always the case, just any catch-up work. We've got 6 weeks remaining, including Thanksgiving. And the main thing that's going to be due at that time is the technology integration plan and your Moodle cloud project. And then any other forums we've done along the way or things like that. So that's really the work, partly for next week, but kind of for the next 2 weeks. Before we see each other here again. All right, so questions, comments. All right, so it is 9:15. We generally go till about 9:30, but what I will say at this point is, I will stay as long as anyone needs me to. If you feel like you're in pretty good shape or would prefer working somewhere else, you do not need to stay for the rest of the evening. But like I said, I will stay here as long as anyone needs me to. If there's work you would like to work on or get done, or you've got questions for me, I can certainly be here as a resource.